Is it possible that being successful will actually take you down? So this week's Torah portion, Parsha Shelach, talks about this crazy episode where the Jewish people who have just come out of this amazing victory in Egypt, having just cut through the world's most powerful nation on earth, essentially destroyed themselves. They're about to get the land of Israel. They ask Moses, can we send people out? Moses, he sends out the spies. There's 12 spies that go out, right? 10 of them come back and basically give the most crazy report against the land of Israel. They say that the land devours its inhabitants. It's not going to go. The people are huge. We're like pathetic in their eyes, which is a whole question about like how did they know what their enemies were thinking about. And then Kalev and Yoshua, these two people, right? These two of the 12. Get good math right there. They end up giving a positive response. They say, you know what? It's not so bad that God will deliver us, etc. So there's this crazy concept that comes out from this. First of all, how is it possible that these 10 men, which the Torah goes, again, the Torah itself, all the commentators go through, these are very, very, very high caliber quality people, right? How is it possible that these guys would turn essentially and false at such a quick pace? How'd that happen? So the answer is the following, right? When the Jewish people were living in Egypt, when the Jewish people were living in the desert, and they were completely surrounded by God, they lived in this spiritual state of ecstasy, right? And the people that were in charge, these men that Moses picked, so they had the status, they were leaders. And when they saw the idea that they would be eminently going to Israel, so what happened was twofold. First of all, they were afraid that perhaps they would lose. Again, what do you do in Israel? You have to plant. You have to live a normal life. Like the honeymoon phase was over, right? And so they knew that they were going to have to get involved with the world. It was going to essentially pull them out from spirituality. You see this crazy concept a lot of times. There's a famous guy in the Talmud, that he loved Torah so much that he didn't decide not to get married. And that's actually, interestingly enough, that's actually not what God wants. The idea, you think to yourself, it's like getting married, and again, let's get very candid and honest over here, right? A lot of times we think about the things in our lives and the responsibilities in our lives, and we're like, if I just didn't have these things, kids and marriage and a job, like, well, what else are you going to do? The answer is, you're like, well, I can do whatever I want. Right? I could sit and study all day long. I could sit and write all day long. I could sit and meditate all day long. I could sit and work out all day long. Whatever your cup of tea is. Don't ask mine. But the idea is that the responsibilities in our lives, a lot of times we look at that as liabilities. Right? The fact that the spies, the Jewish people, are going to have to go and start planting and start building a life in the land of Israel and having to start fighting wars again. And they're like, no, we're learning. It's fantastic. We just want to stay in the desert. Boom. At that point, they were afraid their success, the successful conquest, they were afraid of what that would mean for them. And as a result, they didn't want to be successful. They sabotaged themselves. They sabotaged their whole nation. They caused this horrific tragedy. All as well, this crazy concept that they thought that perhaps it's possible that they wouldn't be the leaders in the land of Israel. So that subconscious need shot in with them, and they weren't able to execute at the level that they wanted to, because they're like, well, what happens if we are successful? Right? What happens? Maybe we'll lose our status. So you see this tremendous concept that we shoot ourselves in the foot so often because we are afraid of what's going to happen if we actually get there. And right before we get to the finish line, that's when we drop the ball and we don't go further, right? I talked about health and weight loss, right? You're right at your goal, and then right when you get to your goal, what happens is that you wind up sabotage yourself, because well, what if I have to stay in this state for so long? What do I really want to be like this? How's this all going to work? Step number one, right? And step number two, and this is the most profound, tremendous, punch you in the face idea, not punch you in the face. I was shocked when I read this, right? The famous book that I love quoting, Carol Dweck, Stanford psychologist, talks about growth versus fixed mindset. So the amazing thing is this: Kalev and Yoshua, the two spies that ended up giving a positive report about the land of Israel. So who was Kalev? Kalev came from Yehuda, and Yehuda was the famous paradigm of tshuva. Right? Tshuva. So he made mistakes and he was able to come around and say, I really screwed up. That was the legacy of Yehuda. So Yehuda's legacy, they're okay with the idea that they're not perfect. Right? And who was Yoshua? So he was Moses' main student, and Moses, before he sent him out there, changed his name. So essentially redid all of his status so that he was coming kind of fresh. And what do we know about the other 10? The other 10, we know that they were just great men. So this crazy concept, what does this mean? This means that there are 10 people going into it that hadn't experienced change, that needed to hang on to their status, and any sort of deviation from their status would mean they were a failure. If I'm known to be smart, and all of a sudden I'm shown not to be smart, I come undone. If I'm known to be fit, and then all of a sudden I'm like not that fit, like I don't know what to do with myself. So the idea is if you would define yourself by who you are, you'll never take chances because you'll never take a risk because you'll never want to lose. Because all of your status is like wound up in that. But if you're like the other two, and what you value, and again, this is a beautiful idea that we say in Judaism, it says that God values the effort. It doesn't matter what you accomplish, he just values your effort. That's the ultimate endorsement of the a changed mindset, of a growth mindset. All that matters is you try. So when you raise your kids, when you raise ourselves, and you sit and look back and you say, did I put effort in? If I did, I'm fantastic. So that's the idea of real growth. So I want to give everyone a blessing that you should try to the very best of your ability to have that changed mindset and not to repeat the sin of the spies. Shabbat Shalom.